Hello and welcome to the Celtic State of Mind Tuesday Bulletin. I'm joined by Liam Callaghan and Lawrence Connolly to talk all things Celtic, as you can see from the tagline. There's going to be a lot of transfer talk, but I'll leave the barrage of transfer rumours and whirlwind, the mill keeps spinning, as they say. We'll leave that for a bit later in the show because we've got a bit more pressing matters. First of all, a new kit. We're going to be wearing this for most games next season. You need to put up with this for an entire year. We saw a teaser last night for the new Celtic home kit. We've seen the away kit. I thought it was all right. I'll get you guys' opinion on it in just a moment. Be sure in the comments as well to let me know your opinions on the new kit. But our worst fears weren't answered. At least, I've not really seen different opinions on this kit. It's really been a unanimous hatred for it. The new snakeskin Celtic home kit. Liam, you've got a really smart top on there, as I was mentioning to you before the show. What do you think of the Celtic home kit? And I'll get your thoughts on the away kit as well while we're at it.
Well, I'm actually going to break with what the majority seem to say here, and I don't think it's that bad. The thing is, and I made this point on Celtic Down Under last week as well, when the rumours first broke that this was going to be the new home kit. I said, look, there's only so much you can do with green and white hoops. And the Adidas home kits up till now have been beautiful. But if you put the three of them together, as I did the other day actually when I was doing my washing, you realise that the three of them are very, very similar, and it's getting harder and harder to justify charging fans. By the time I get it shipped to Japan, I'm looking at £100 for a shirt. And for that money, I want something that's a wee bit different. Maybe not quite as different as this one is, but I don't blame Adidas for trying. Put it that way.
I think it's hard to get a Celtic home kit wrong. It's the simplicity. It's so simple in its style. That's the main selling point of the Celtic shirt. For me, looking over how Adidas have done the shirts so far, my favourite, probably a bit controversial, was the third kit from a few years ago, the white one with the pink and green stripes going down through the middle. Not the most popular choice, but it's probably the biggest hit of the Adidas time with Celtic so far.
That's my wife's favourite top, actually. That's the one she'll be wearing when we go to Yokohama.
Lawrence, do you think it'll grow on you, or do you like it already?
Listen, it's a football kit. I think it's probably okay, but the thing about it, the problem is it doesn't look like instantly recognisable as a Celtic top. We've got one of the most, if not the most recognisable home shirts in the world. If it's done right, the green and white hoops. This isn't instantly recognisable as a Celtic top. And yeah, I think maybe that's it. A football top, it's all right. But for me, as a Celtic home shirt, yeah, it's not what it should be. But, it's a hard remit. What do you do with green and white hoops? You mess about with the collar, you put stripes on, you panels. But I think they've went too far with this one. It looks like, something from the German league or something, looks a bit continental style. Maybe that's Adidas coming into it. But yeah, it's just, you don't look at it and think Celtic home shirt, or other people would look at it and think, what team is it that? But the previous efforts from Adidas and the rumoured limited edition kit, you would look and go, Celtic. This one, you don't.
I think that was the case last season as well. We thought that fourth kit they released for, I think it was St Patrick's Day, that was cooler than a lot of the away in the third top, I thought, from last season. We might be looking at something similar this season with this limited edition top being the nicest out of four tops that actually get released. But I want to move on from kit chat, the easy part to talk about. I want to get over to Brendan Rodgers. I was lucky enough to attend his first press conference on Friday. It was the moment we've been waiting for, really, since he signed last Monday. We've all been waiting to hear what Brendan Rodgers has had to say. We got a little bit of a preview when we heard his exclusive interview on Thursday night. There was a lot of sort of quotables to take from that, such as Cal McGregor going to visit him over in Mallorca and how much he admired the recruitment strategy. And he honed in even more on that in the mainstream media conference, and then he was speaking to the fan media as well. The work in the background that's gone on since he left. Mark Law received very high praise from Rodgers over both press conferences. Liam, do you think those two working hand in hand, carrying on the current recruitment model, that we're using. You think that'll be even more effective in helping us towards a bit more success? You've been a big advocate of Celtic dipping into these more sort of untapped markets and finding hidden gems for the cut price deals. Are you happy to see that continuing and Rodgers' praise of Mark Lawwell?
Yeah, I would say that looking back on, I can't remember if it was last Tuesday or if it was last Wednesday, Celtic Down Under, but I said that going into the press conference, there were two things that I was worried about, primarily with Rodgers coming back. One was the schism in the support because of how he left last time, and I felt that an apology was probably not necessary, but some sort of acknowledgement and some kind of contrition, I think, was important, and we got that. The second one was, which, was maybe a bit hyperbolic on my part, but I was a bit worried that we would revert back to signing cast-offs from the English leagues, as we did pretty much up until Ange came in. So the fact that, our headline today shows that we are hopefully about to sign an Australian and a Korean, tells me that even if we don't get those two players, we are still dipping into those markets. And we signed a Norwegian last week. So clearly the international aspect of Celtic, whether it's through Mark Lawwell, whether it's through Brendan Rodgers, or whether it's through the City Group, it doesn't really matter. As long as it continues, I'm happy.
You mentioned Odin Thiago Holm there, the most recent signing. I've been keeping up with his social media. He's been posting himself doing some backflips off of cliffs in Norway. So let's just keep our fingers crossed that Odin can avoid some very serious injuries there. Lawrence, there would have been a lot of factors that would have come into play with getting Rodgers back at the club. And I think recruitment would have been a massive sort of factor in getting Rodgers back in, because it was fallouts over recruitment and over financials that led to Rodgers leaving in the first place, along with the allure of the Premier League. How big do you think, sort of being reassured over recruitment, this is the style now, over these last few years, this is how much it's changed? It's better than when you were here the last time. We can probably get you the players they want, or even at a cut price deal as well. You think that would have been one of the biggest factors in getting Rodgers over?
Listen, that wasn't his first press conference you were at. That was his second first press conference. It was. But yeah, listen, it's something Rodgers would have been wanting reassurance on. We all know about Fred. You can't have a manager sitting there going, I don't know anything about the new signing. We don't need another winger. So, yeah, it's something he would have wanted reassurance on. He's come out and said, look, he's really impressed with it. So, yeah, you can listen, it's better than it was when he left that area of the club. We've invested in it. We've brought Mark Lawwell from the City Group. Obviously, he comes with his connections. Put it this way, if he'd been told, oh no, recruitment's the same, and then it'll be dealt with as the same when you were here last, I don't think they're signed on the line. I think that goes without saying. So he's got whatever assurances he needs. It sounds like he's had to give some assurances the other way as well, that, I'll see out my 3-year contract, as long as I'm not sacked or emptied, as they put it. So, yeah. So there seems to be, some pretty honest chat between both sides there, doesn't it? He's had to come in and say, I'm going to, see out this contract, don't worry. And on the other side, he's had to be persuaded that the issues with recruitment are no longer there.
Yeah, Liam, you mentioned you wanted to see how Rodgers would react to the schism, as you put it, over how he left. His response to that was he doesn't have any regrets about going to Leicester, but he regrets how he made the supporters feel. I mentioned on the show with Kevin yesterday, that was probably the most sort of solemn tone that he used in that press conference. Is that sort of an adequate response? Not an apology, but was that what you would have been looking for?
Look, it's not going to satisfy everybody, right? But it's good enough for me. And judging by what I'm seeing on social media, I think most Celtic fans are saying, look, he's acknowledged it. He didn't quite apologise for it, but he gave a bit of context to it. And yeah, I'm happy to move forward from here. I was, if you go back and watch the shows over the last few weeks, I was not really on board with Rodgers coming back. But he's here now. He has acknowledged that he hurt a lot of the support when he left, how he did. And, that's contrition. that however you want to do it, that is contrition on his part. And that was all I wanted. A full-blown apology would have been difficult for him because it would have made him look weak, and it would have been a bit unprofessional as well, because Leicester was his previous employer. You don't want to be disrespectful to teams you used to work with. So I think he handled it very, very well, actually. And like you say, there was a sincerity about it, which I'm satisfied with. Not everybody's going to be, but I'm okay to move forward for here.
Lawrence, do you think that was probably the best way to go about things? As Liam mentioned, it was probably out of respect to Leicester as well. Whenever he was Leicester manager, he was asked about Celtic. It was always Celtic's team of support. I've always have a love for Celtic. I had the chance to go back in a heartbeat. Things like that. Did you think that's probably the best thing Rodgers could have said in the press conference? Do you think it's just all about looking forward now? That's it covered?
Yeah, it needed addressed. And, it needs to be acknowledgement that people were hurt. It's obviously he's acknowledged that, there was hurt caused. Listen, you can understand why he moved on at the time. There was obviously disputes over signings and who was making them, etc. And when you look at Celtic sport, we've seen people not take their seats at games or decide not to sing or boycott. So some people are criticising Rodgers because he walked away. Maybe it was more when he walked away in the season, but he's come out and he's addressed it. What did you expect him to say? What do people want him to say? If it's not persuaded what he's saying now, would they ever be persuaded? And I think he summed it up well with those that aren't, persuaded. He'll say he's here in May. Because if he's delivering a treble in May, I'm pretty sure everything's going to be being forgotten about.
Yeah, I think the reaction in his first game will be very interesting. If there's any sort of banners or displays or anything like that. We covered that on last week's show, and we were talking about the Green Brigade and how they responded to the initial appointment. My question to Brendan Rodgers was, I've been sort of sounding it out for the last sort of week or two since I've been hosting the show. It's been all about Europe for me. Brendan Rodgers, his response to that was he thinks we need more power for the Champions League, Liam. You've been raving about Mooy Iwata for the last sort of few weeks. I'm in agreement with you. I think he could have a really big part to play under Brendan Rodgers, especially in that double pivot. Do you think he's the steal that Celtic could be looking for, a bit more power in the midfield, or do you think it would need to be a new signing that would give us that?
No, I think Iwata can step up to that level, definitely. And he's going to have ambitions to get into the Japan national team as well. He'll see what Kyogo and Daisen both scored last week for Japan. Very convincing performances from Hatate as well. So Iwata's probably sitting back looking at that and thinking, I fancy a bit of that. And European displays are the quickest pathway to that, because for all, Moriyasu finally caved into fan pressure and gave Kyogo a game, he's made it clear he doesn't really rate the Scottish League. So, and he's very, no disrespect to the wife, but he's very Japanese in that respect, that when he's got his mind set on something, it's almost impossible to change it. So I think if Iwata wants to play for Japan, and remember there's an Asian Cup coming up in, about 9 months' time, he's going to have to do something in Europe. And so is Kyogo, to be fair. So
I think Kyogo proved in the first Europa League campaign that there is the possibility for when he's at the top of his game, when he's flying, he can do something. There was just injuries that were disrupting his game and disrupting him getting any sort of consistency in his game when we were in the Champions League last year. I just want to stick on, Rodgers mentioned we need a bit of power. Lawrence, do you think that power is needed in the defence, or is it in front of the defence in the midfield? I think we've got a couple of players in the team that could have a bit of a mean streak, not afraid to put a tackle in, like your Alistair Johnson's, Cal McGregor. Even Matt O'Reilly's quite prone to putting in a bit of a crunching tackle. Do you think it's the defence or the midfield?
I think probably more the midfield. We're not the biggest defence, but Alistair Johnson, Carter Vickers, Starfelt, they're all boys that can put a tackle in. Greg's probably the one that's a wee bit more lightweight in that terms, but you Yeah, I think it's probably a midfield where we've been accused of getting bullied sometimes. If you had a Victor Wanyama type in there, and sometimes maybe as a change for up front, we're looking at signing another forward. Woodall and Keogh will get you through a full season if you really want to make an assault in Europe. Depends. I think you need a third striker that could do something. Listen, Brendan might come in and play 3-5-2. We don't know. You're kind of going, right, where do we want power? Well, I suppose it's going to depend what system he's going to play. Is he going to stick 4-3-3? Is he going to play 3-5-2? And then it's going to be dictated from there. But, there were accusations at times we look like lightweight or get bullied. Even, games that, thinking back to St Mirren game we lost, they just seem to be right on top of us all the time. Just really need to be able to stand up a wee bit better. Not that we had that many bad results under Ange domestically, but if there was a feeling sometimes you're thinking, yeah, we just need to be able to stand up a bit more here, a bit more robust. Maybe that's what he's talking about. But I'm sure Brendan will have identified, what system he's going to play, and from that will be where the power is going to be needed. But at centre half, if Stephen Welsh moves on, which I think he's got to do for his career, we're going to need another centre half in for certain. You've got Kobayashi, CCV, and Starfelt. I'd hope we'd be buying a start centre half. Go because it's not a rebuild; it is improving the first team now. If you're going out and buying somebody that's better than CCV, it really improves your team, doesn't it? So, yeah, what he means by power, I suppose, and where it's going to depend on what formation he plays, isn't it? If he thinks he's going to play a double pivot, well, you've got Awata and McGregor. If he keeps McGregor back, but is he talking about having a backup? Would he push McGregor further forward? Because we know Brendan liked him further forward before, but Callum's a wee bit older now, and he's adapted really well further back. So I guess that's what we'll see in the new season.
I think that is McGregor's best role, just in front of the defence, allowing play to progress a lot more smoother. As much as power was perhaps a bit of a problem for Celtic, I think pace was a bit of an aspect of where things went wrong as well. The amount of goals we conceded on the counter-attack, teams would just carve us open really easily with some of those pacey wingers. NP jumping in here. Abelgard was meant to be the DM power, but it didn't work out. Don't think height is everything. So what, I could step up. I'm in agreement there. I think.
But what is 6'2", so height wouldn't be an issue anyway.
That's just from watching the game. You assume he was a bit smaller. Rodgers is going to be meeting up with the players next week. We're just touching on Tomoki Awata. I think Brendan Rodgers coming in might be the best thing that could happen for some of the players on the fringes at Celtic, some of the sort of more out of favour players, because I've mentioned in a few of the blog posts now. Thank you everybody in the chat, by the way, for getting involved and reading some of those blog posts. But I've been mentioning that could lead to a new lease of life for some of the players that were perhaps out of favour. Minutes were perhaps a bit more limited under Ange Postecoglou. Liam, would you agree? Would you say the same? Does any players that you think in particular could get a new lease of life? Someone like Acsom or maybe even a Kobayashi?
There's a couple of players that spring to mind that I think it's going to be make or break for them in the next month or so, whether they cut it at Celtic or not. I think Bernabei. If we go to a 3-5-2, then that would definitely suit his game more. But then what do you do with Greg Taylor, who has been one of our most consistent performers over the last 18 months? I would be really interested to see Alistair Johnson playing as a wing-back. I think he would be superb in that role. Because he's got the engine, he likes a tackle, as you said, and he's good at tracking back. I would have been interested on reflection, and this is not a slight on Juranovic, but I'd have been interested to see what we would have done in the Champions League if we'd have had Alistair Johnson at the start of the season. I think he might have been more effective for what we needed in those European games. Kobayashi is a work in progress, and I still think he will emerge, but he does need to toughen up. If the likes of St Mirren and the team that call themselves Rangers can bully him, what's it going to be like when he goes up against a big imposing German or English team in the Champions League? They'll they'll make mincemeat out of him if he's not prepared for it. So
Yeah, a lot of those games where he was struggling, they were what we would perhaps call a dead rubber game, a meaningless game. And
yeah,
if his nerves are absolutely shot in a dead rubber game against a Hearts or something like that, then you've got to wonder when he's going to really get that confidence and toughen up. Perhaps maybe the loan move could be something for him to maybe. I don't think another team in this league, perhaps maybe a move down south could be something for him. Lawrence, Liam touched on Alexandro Bernabe there, how he could perhaps play a role if we move to a 3-5-2. I think it'll be the 4-2-3-1, but Greg Taylor, he wasn't really the best at hitting the byline under previous regimes, but I think he could still work with Brendan Rodgers because we've seen how much he's developed in the last 2 years. We've seen how much of a smarter player he's become as well. But do you think between Taylor and Bernabe there could be a bit of a battle next season for minutes?
Listen, Bernabe need to immeasurably improve to get anywhere near Greg Taylor. You're saying he's not the best at the byline, but tell you what, his assist stats are pretty good, Greg Taylor. So doesn't matter where you're assisting from the byline, from outside the box. If you're setting up goals, you're setting them up. It's huge for Bernabe. He's a young player, different country. He's maybe had a couple of good games. Yeah, it's going to be absolutely huge for him. If Brendan comes in and he goes, well, what's my cover over at left back, Bernabe and Taylor? Who can you easily improve upon? If you're looking to buy someone in, well, it's easier to improve on Bernabe than it is Taylor. So I would say that, yeah, Bernabe's he's maybe a guy for a loan move if we get another left back in. Because he needs minutes, and I can't see him getting a lot with us.
Yeah, you're not going to develop your game if you're not playing. Stephen Reeves coming here with a very good point. Bernabe's contract until 2027. We need to give these guys a chance. Taylor took about 2 years to make an impact. He only came from Kilmarnock, not Buenos Aires. I touched on a couple of things that could have played a factor in Bernabe struggling, not having a knowledge of the language. I think he had a family member that was very close to him pass as well. So I hope for his sake he can have a bit of a better season next year. But I want to move on to the whirlwind now, the transfers, the rumour mill has been continuing to spin. And I woke up this morning to be absolutely stunned that Reo Hatate has been linked with a move to Al Ittihad in Saudi Arabia. Liam Benzema and N'Golo Kante have already joined Al Ittihad this summer. There's been, from Europe and from Britain, the point of view towards the Saudi Arabian League plucking a lot of the top players from Europe. You've seen the likes of it's not even if it's just as a retirement home, you've seen the likes of Ruben Neves that could have moved up to a team like a Manchester United, someone like that, jump ship over to Saudi Arabia. First of all, I want to ask you, how is the Saudi Arabian sweep of European football, how is that viewed over in Japan? Is it viewed with the same sort of paranoia, or is it viewed as being bad for the footballing game?
It's pretty much viewed the same way as the Chinese league is, because the Chinese tried the same thing about 3 or 4 years ago, importing a lot of very, very expensive foreign talent, and it did absolutely nothing to improve their national team. I think that's the Chinese league still has expensive foreign imports, but nothing like the extent they had pre-COVID. Now that's partly due to the immigration restrictions in China because of the virus, but also because there's been a bit of a financial reality check in that league, and quite a few owners have found themselves in trouble for misappropriating funds.
Yeah, the Inter Milan owners, they owned Shanghai Shenhua, I think it was, in China, and they had to completely sell the Chinese club, and they're trying to get rid of all their shares in Inter Milan as well.
So the Shanghai owners got Shanghaied, is that what you're telling me?
Well, do you think there's a prospect that Hatate could move on? Do you think he would look at that, or do you think he's a bit more ambitious? We've mentioned the ambition of our Japanese players already, based on the fact that they have jumped over to Scotland to improve their game. You think Hatate's got a bit more ambition than that?
I would hope so, but what I would say is I'm quite relaxed about this, because if Hatate goes, if he's going to Saudi, it'll be funny money, because he would not go for any less. These Saudi clubs are splashing out 20-30 million on these players. Celtic can say, all right, if you want one of our best midfielders, we'll have that as well. And if they don't play ball, Hatate's still got a couple of years left in his contract, so he doesn't go anywhere. As I said last week, the days of Celtic being the intermediary club are out the window as far as I'm concerned. If a big club wants one of our players, they can pay the same money they would pay to a mid-table club in England. 20, 30 million is what we should be asking for minimum for our best players now. And Hatate is one of our best players. So
yeah, consistently undervaluing our players, not just at Celtic, but across the Scottish Premiership in general. We've been undervaluing our players for years. And this is why we get sort of lowballed with some of these offers that come in. Lawrence, is there any worries from you that Hatate could be swayed by Al Ittihad over in Saudi Arabia? Do you think it could be a bit of a warning sign for the future that the right money, the right wages come in, any player could jump ship?
I think since professionalism came in, that's been the case, isn't it? Players move for more money. Shock. Would it be the right move for Reo to go to Saudi for his career? He's not had a huge career as a professional footballer yet. He's got loads of potential. Liam's touched on it. The Japan manager maybe doesn't see Scottish football as that high. I thought, Reo would be destined for EPL or a top league in Europe at some point in his career. Because straight to Saudi Arabia, I don't think it'd be the best move for his career. Would they go for the money? Maybe. Brendan's first time round, Liam's touched China were looking at players. There's rumours that were after Dembele at that point, after Musa. So if they come in for him, as long as they pay, the correct level of money that the boy's worth, doesn't matter. If the player doesn't want to be here, you can't. What's the point forcing him to stay? We know what that leads to. If they come in and offer us 30 million, I'm sure it would be easy to deal with at that level, wouldn't it? They'd be going, yeah, give us 30 as long as it gets reinvested back in the team. But yeah, it's got to be wrong for Reo, isn't it? You want him to do more. I mean, you look over at the States, you've got Lewis Morgan and Giacomakis earning more money than they could at Celtic. But do they really want to be there in terms of a football career? Some players, at the end of your career, when you won your medals and played in the biggest stages, the Champions League, you go there for the money then, not when you've still got something to develop in your career. So, yeah, for me, it'd be the wrong move for Reo, but, for 30 million, yeah, definitely take it.
Yeah, Lawrence, you took the words right out of my mouth that you would get it if it was a player who'd won the Champions Leagues and won the World Cups, then a last payday at the end of their career. The likes of your Benzemas or even Messi going over to Inter Miami in America, you'd understand that, but going at 25 or whatever, when you've still got years ahead of you, you've got the big trophies, the big games, the big stadiums to play in, and it's basically career ending. You're killing your career for the sake of a few bucks. It doesn't really look very good. But I want to touch on another midfielder at Celtic, Aaron Mooy. What started as just social media rumours, it seems to have really started to gather steam with some reports coming out of Australia. Media outlet over there, Football, says a well-placed source has told them Aaron Mooy has been thinking things over about his future. He missed Australia's international friendly against world champions Argentina a few weeks ago. Liam, do you think, first of all, Ron Mooy potentially retiring, do you think he still has a part to play at Celtics? I've mentioned on the show over the last sort of few months that with a pre-season and back to full fitness, Aaron Mooy could have a real part to play, because he was struggling in the Champions League last year, but that was Aaron Mooy at about 40% of his capabilities. It was the World Cup and the consistent minutes there that really pushed him on. Do you think Mooy could still have a part to play at Celtic?
Aaron Mooy showed enough last season between the World Cup and the sort of a post-Christmas spell where he was probably our best player for about a month or so. He showed enough there to show that he could stroll it in Scotland for another couple of years if he wanted to. He's still got the legs. He's still got the ability. He's not that old, really. I mean, what is he, 32? 33?
32, I think, yeah.
I mean, the players these days can comfortably go to 35 if they look after themselves. Scott Brown showed that. And I think that Aaron Mooy, it's going to be up to him, but I don't see him retiring. I really don't. I mean, he might, if it's because Ange isn't there anymore, and maybe it was the relationship with Andrews what brought him to Celtic in the first place. He might fancy going home and having a crack at the A-League, because that's an up and coming league, decent standard. He could play there and still get a game for Australia, because they don't have the same snobbery that the Japan manager has towards these perceived lower leagues. I was just just to double back on something I meant to say. Well, Lawrence just kind of triggered a thought in me while he was speaking there. The thing about Saudi, to speak to the wider worry about, is Saudi just going to start draining European football, right? They want to host the World Cup in 2032.
I think they've got the Club World Cup in 2023 already. I think that's seen as a tester tournament, them hosting the Club World Cup this year.
That's why they want to do this. This is all about getting the Saudi team in a position where they can compete at the 2032 World Cup, right? The Saudi team got a tremendous result against Argentina, but that was a freak result, right? Saudi Arabia are mince. They are, right? They're not quite as bad as Qatar, but they are not a force at all. And importing a load of overpaid, albeit supremely talented foreigners is not going to change that. As I said, China tried it 5 years ago and it didn't work. They've still not got near a World Cup.
Even the Russian teams from the early 2010s, I think it was Anze, I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name of the city. Makakala. They signed Samuel Eto'o. I think they got someone else as well that was quite a big name. Mm-hmm. So it's nothing new in football, but it seems like the likes of Bernardo Silva could potentially be jumping over. There are players that have still got something ahead of them. That's what's getting people a bit worried. But Lawrence, I want to go back to Aaron Mooy. Do you think if he's sort of looking at his career, he's played in the Premier League, he's just won a treble, do you think he would perhaps be looking at it now as the right time to call it a day? But on the other hand, you could look at the fact that what Brendan Rodgers done with Scott Brown, they can revitalise a player, they can sort of just flick around with their position and really add a few more years onto their career and a few more trophies on it as well.
Well, he's got a year left in his contract with us. So I think if he's retiring, it's due to injury. He's living in Glasgow, his wife's Scottish. What's he going to, if he's going to retire from football altogether? I think that would just be down to injury. He's probably having the best time in his football career. He's winning things. All players like to win things. So I can't see him walking away from Celtic unless Brendan has a word with him saying, well, I'm going to really strengthen the midfield and it's going to push you further down. I'm willing to let you go if you want to go and take another payday. But then does he want to move elsewhere? Maybe his wife's happy to be home. Maybe he's thinking, I'll play out a year here and that's it. I'm happy to be a squad player. Because I think when we signed, we all thought, it's a £6 million player for free. He'll be a squad player, decent signing. He went on to prove he was a bit more than a squad player. Liam touched on it. It was 2 months. He's probably the best player in the team. So, retirement, I could only see that for injury.
He was talking about it was a back injury. He's had some back problems over the last sort of year.
So that's the only thing I could see. If it's injury, it's going to keep him out. He's not going to play every week, is he? So can he manage his injury for another year and see out his contract? Probably. Yeah, he's at the end of his career, but it would need to be injury that was stopping him playing altogether, I think, before he'd retire.
I think they done something about a year ago before he joined Celtic. I think the Chinese season had been curtailed with COVID, or he might have just been a free agent, but he didn't have a club, and he was still just not playing for a club, but playing for the national team. So he'd just sort of pop up, play a game every few months, and he was guaranteed a place in that Australian team. Perhaps something like that could be what Aaron Mooy could be looking at. Andrew Galea thinks the opposite. Mooy will retire from international football, not Celtic. He'll play on. He lives in Scotland. They could see that. But we'll stick on the midfield. We've got a new midfield at the club since you guys have last been on. I think it was around last Thursday, maybe, that Odin Holm signed for the club. When you guys were on the show last week, we were talking about Daniel Amarte and Wilfred Ndidi from Leicester. But we now know Odin Thiago Holm is Brendan Rodgers' first signing. Liam, do you like that approach, buying the younger players with the sell-on value?
Yeah, it fits the mould of what we've been doing for the last few years now. I'll be honest, I know nothing about the player. But I know that Norway produces pretty decent young talent. He's going to have the physical attributes for Scotland right away, because the Scandinavian leagues are as physical, if not more so, than Scotland. So that's not going to be a problem. I'm interested to see what he can do, and we'll just wait and see how it goes. I can't really say much until I've seen him play, to be honest.
Yeah, we'll need to see a bit more from him. All I've known from some of the scout reports I've read is he's a bit of a similar mould to Cal McGregor, playing that sort of number 6. Lawrence, it seems like we're sticking on with this approach, as I mentioned, of buying the younger players with a selling value. But we know that Brendan Rodgers, he likes a statement signing, he likes a player to sign that will grab the headlines, that will galvanise the support and get everybody excited for the new season. Do you still think that'll come? And if it does come, which position do you think it'll be in?
Listen, I think we'll get 2 or 3 statement signings from Brendan. It's not a squad rebuild. He's got a sizable transfer fee, and anything above 5 million is a statement signing in Scotland. Will we beat a transfer record? It's possibly that we will. As for home, apparently we've been tracking him for a while. I've no doubt Brendan's had a look at the file, the videos on him, and given him the green light. Boy seems to be decent at bungee jumping. Will it turn into another Petrov for us? Hopefully, it's identifying good young talent that we can afford to buy, develop, and sell at a profit. With obviously our sell-on fees in there. It's rumoured that Frimpong's going to move. Could get a bit of decent money to reinvest. Same if Tierney moves. So yeah, but it wouldn't shock anyone if Brendan signs 3 players for about 30 million quid. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he's got that kind of spend. We've had 13 players on loan. I think 2 of them have been freed. I think Ole Montgomery's got a chance of staying if you free up the wages on the others. And then whoever wants to move, rumours Abada might want to move on. You get decent money for him as well, wouldn't you? So yeah, you'd expect Brendan to bring in some players for over 5 million each. So who it's going to be, who knows, but I don't think it'd be Brendan without them.
Oh, is our host frozen there?
Yeah, what do you reckon, Liam? I mean, Brendan's going to spend, and he assess that squad and say, look, 3 first-team starters. I think that's what he's got to look at. Bringing in players that are going to start in the first team. Not squad players, the players that really make the difference to the first-team starters, aren't they?
As I said, my only worry is that, if we spend 9 million on one player, in the Asian markets, you could probably get 3 or 4 players that will be almost as good for that money. That's where it's a value judgment as much as I get it. I get the whole thing of a statement signing, but I think the days of anybody in Scotland spending 9 million quid on a player are gone now. And to be honest, I hope they don't come back, because I think bringing on young players and developing them wherever they're from is the model that all clubs should be embracing.
Well, if you're spending their own 9 million, I suppose, on a young player and developing him, he's already you'd expect at a higher level than somebody that they're bringing in at 3 million. So it's going to come down to the individuals, isn't it? We're definitely, we're a selling club. We accept that. We're not going to spend 9 million. I would have thought on a 28 or a 29-year-old, that's got 0 sell-on value. But we're spending that kind of money. It's exciting young players that we're bringing in that we should be able to develop. The problem is, I suppose, if they're worth that 9 million at that age, there's a lot of clubs that already know about them. It's the competition you face, isn't it?
Aye. Ultimately, it's like you say, if we spend that kind of money on a 21-year-old, I'll be all right with it, because hopefully that means we'll get 3 times that in 3 or 4 years' time when he goes to England or whatever. But I don't see us signing like a 28 or 29-year-old for that kind of money.
That'd be crazy, wouldn't it? That's just money thrown away. You can't be doing that.
Yeah, it's got to be the sort of players that you would see a team like Ajax picking up, the sort of players that they might be around perhaps under 23, under 21.
Ajax picked up a defender from a team that played in blue and did his job.
I never said 20 million or whatever that was. But one player, I'll touch on another player who's linked with Ajax. That's Liel Abada. We've had some issues with his contract. Apparently, he's rejected a contract offer from Celtic. He seems like the type of player that would thrive under Brendan Rodgers. I've said that a few times in the show now. He's still young. He's only 21. I don't think he needs a big move now at this stage, Liam. Do you think Abada can have a big part to play? And you think Rodgers could be the man, if he promises him more game time, do you think he could be the man to stay and perhaps play a big part?
Yeah. I mean, to me, Abada he could be the sort of the second coming of Scott Sinclair, if you like. It's that type of player that, like you say, Brendan Rodgers loves to work with. He loves tricky wingers. I think he would thrive in a Rodgers team. But I'm going to go back to something that Ange said when he was the manager. Said anybody that doesn't want to be here can go. And to be honest, I'm still of that attitude. If Abada has his heart set on going somewhere else, I think it's a mistake. Because, like you say, he's still got development to do here. And I think his agent is filling his head with nonsense, probably telling him that he's a better player than he actually is at the moment, although the potential's definitely there. The smart thing for him to do would be to stay at Celtic for another 2 years or so at least. Do a bit of damage in Europe and then go for, 20 plus million.
Yeah,
Celtic,
I think we all know.
He gets his big move. But if he goes now, he goes probably for less than 10 million, which is a shame because he's definitely worth more than that if you can get him to his full potential.
Yeah, we all know how high his ceiling is, but we all know he's not the finished article either as much as he is a quality player. There's still some things he needs to work on if he's going to be a top player at the highest level. Marky coming in and agreeing with us here. Abada's got a lot to brush up on in his game. Pete coming in here. Let's be honest, if we don't spend some serious money on tried and tested players with some Euro experience, we'll get nowhere in the Champions League. I think you've got to find a good balance in your signing philosophy. I hate to be going back to Ajax so much, but their team is a mix of tested players in Europe. They had the likes of Daley Blind over the past, and then the young talent that's breaking through as well. And Celtic, if they can find a mix of that, it could be really good for us to push on in Europe. Lon, so I'll stick on Abada with yourself. Do you think if Rodgers can promise him more game time, he could stay around? I think we should be doing sort of a lot that we can really to try and get him to keep at the club. I think it's the agent in the first place that seems to be causing the problems. The same agent that Josip Juranovic had, and with Juranovic, we know a drop in form for him conveniently coincided with the transfer rumours flying around. We always see it. You think Rodgers could convince Abada to stay? Do you think he's still got more improvement to come ahead of him?
I think it's a delicate balance. You mentioned the word problems, because if he's causing problems, get him out. If he doesn't want to be here, get him out. That's what you've got to worry about, because if he starts causing problems and gets promised a game time and more money, well, what does the next guy do that wants more game time and more money? You've got to watch that you're not setting a precedent there. I don't think it's so much convincing, and Rodgers sits him down and tells him the plan. He either buys into it or he doesn't. If he doesn't like Brendan's plan, saying, look, this is where I'm taking the club and the team would like you to be part of it. This is the type of players I like, and what Brendan's like. Saying, here are examples of players I've developed, like Sterling or whoever, and that's something I feel I could do for your career. But that doesn't buy into it. Yeah, get rid of him. Don't keep problems at the club. Move him on. What would be right for Liel? His numbers are frightening. Consistency's lacking. Could argue he doesn't get a lot of game time, or it doesn't get enough minutes. But part of that's down to the way he's performing at times. He's got potential, but just now, it's more potential than delivering. You think that boy could really do well under Rodgers, could grow his game. But let's be honest, he's been here a couple of seasons and he's not nailed down a first team place. For all his numbers are good, he's not managed to nail down a first team place. So if he's unhappy and he's causing problems, doesn't it's Brendan's call, but I'd be getting rid of him if he starts causing problems. I'd just say, well, look, to be honest, if you really don't want to be here and you can't see how we can develop you and how Brendan can develop him as his manager, just get rid of him.
Yeah, that was part of the reason we all liked Dan, because of how ruthless he was. If a player wanted out, he didn't sort of let them stick around. We saw that with Giakoumakis. He wanted away, and then for about the last 2 months of Giakoumakis' Celtic career, he made, about a couple of 10-minute cameos from the bench. It seems like something similar was happening with Abada for the final few months of last season as well, with all the rumours flying around and a foot seemingly being out the door. Do you think Brendan would be as ruthless, Liam, if there's players who want away? Do you think we saw previous that Brendan could be quite ruthless?
Yeah. I thought it was quite interesting, actually, that Ange's last official act as Celtic manager was to tell Barkas to do one.
It's a bit weird. Barkas is the one on loan showing a bit of form. In fact, we might get some money back for that one. Nah, we'll free him.
I think Ange will be scarred because I think Barkas was the keeper that started the home game against Midfield that had the limited crowds. And I think it was
Barkey, he was christened, wasn't he?
It was Barkey fluffing a free kick or a corner or something that cost us the goal. And perhaps cost us the tie.
Ultimately got us knocked out.
And then the second leg, it was Scott Bain not coming for or absolutely fluffing a corner that cost us. So a goalkeeper is something we've all been harking on about to help us push on in Europe. I've just ran over 2 failures from Celtic goalkeepers in Europe, and you can probably think of numerous more. Liam, do you think a goalkeeper should be top of the list of targets? Because I raised this point to John Hughes and Patrick last week, and then John brought up an interesting point to me that if there's a goalkeeper who's good with the ball at his feet, and if he's good at coming out to claim it, he's a good shot stopper, chances are the top teams already picked him up. Do you think Celtic should be prioritising a certain aspect or a certain factor for a goalkeeper, and which attribute would you be looking for the most for a Celtic goalkeeper that can help us push on in Europe? Because we've had a shot stopper in Craig Gordon, and he didn't really work. We've had a keeper who's apparently good with the ball at his feet in Vasilis Barkas, and that didn't work out either. How does Celtic buy a goalkeeper? What attributes should we be looking at? What sort of age range?
Could I give a Gordon Strachan answer on that? What attributes? Keeping the ball at the net.
Aye. No, I mean the thing is, with goalkeepers, it's as much about character as it is about ability. Sometimes, Fraser Foster was not having a good time when we re-signed him the second time, and he was the player of the year that year for me. Yep. The League Cup final, that last minute unbelievable save against Lazio. It was incredible.
Even home and away against them, he was him and Christopher Julian in particular were the 2 standouts from that.
Julian cleared one off just about off the line. Remember?
Yep, he got the winner at home as well.
Aye. But the point is that there's no particular profile, because if you look at the CV before we signed them, Barkas had a much better CV than Forster did, and yet who would you rather have as a goalkeeper? It's not a contest. But to go back to something one of our commenters said a while ago, there's a need for European experience. Do we have anybody in the squad at the moment who's more experienced in Europe than Joe Hart?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Messi.
But I think getting a goalkeeper to challenge Joe Hart is definitely needed, because Siegrist was intended to be that, and it hasn't really worked out. Joe Hart is, he's still fine in goalkeeping years to play for another 2 or 3 years at least, but we do want to look long term. I'd like to see us bring in a sort of a mid-20s goalkeeper who's established and is maybe looking to push up a level, and let him come in and genuinely challenge Joe Hart. I still think Joe Hart's the number one, and unless we go out and sign a keeper for multi-millions, which I don't think we will, that's not going to change. Any goalkeeper we sign is going to be a prospect signing, probably.
Yeah, I think if you're going to get a goalkeeper who's ambitious and is looking to push up on our level, he's not going to come in to be a backup. If anything, that's going to be a step back for a goalkeeper. It's going to be really hard to find the balance. I think we can improve on Joe Hart, though. I think Joe Hart, he's definitely not the same goalkeeper, as I mentioned, that saved a penalty against Liel Messi in the Champions League. He's not the same goalkeeper. There's a reason the first thing Pep Guardiola did when he came to Man City was get Joe Hart out the door. He's not the same goalkeeper he used to be. As much as he can be a solid shot stopper in Scotland, we need somebody a bit better for Europe. If I go back to the Leipzig away game, all his mistakes costed us. It seems like a cursed position for Celtic in Europe almost. We can't seem to get a goalkeeper that will sort of help us out. And then that might lead you to think if the goalkeeper's always open, perhaps the defence is the issue. Lawrence, do you think the defence could be the issue? I think that could be the place to improve. I've always said that getting a centre-back on the level of Carter Vickers, getting another one, could really help Celtic push on, because the goalkeeper can only be protected by the defence that's in front of him. If the defence is getting bypassed with ease, then what chance has the goalkeeper really got?
It was interesting hearing Brendan speak, and also Ange. I actually caught about Ange speaking, and both of them are talking about being pragmatic. You know, they always want to be attacking, but sometimes you need to be pragmatic. And I think Brendan was speaking specifically about Europe. You know, you can't be attacking all the time. You will leave yourself open. If you're playing against better teams, the strikers are generally better at finishing, aren't they? You know, so the more chances you give them, you know, you'd expect to lose goals. So I think something that's going to be about being a bit more pragmatic in Europe, limiting more chances, not being as open. You know, maybe playing the game in stages, going, you know, under Ange, it was like attack for 45, stop, attack for 45, stop. You know, we might have to play this in stages and say, look, first 10, 15 minutes, sit in, don't lose a goal away from home, you know, frustrate them, then come out a bit. So, yeah, I think that, you know, allows them to get confidence. If you're away from home and you've not lost in the first 15, 20 minutes, thinking, right, we've got a foothold in the game now. Let's execute a game plan now. Let's attack for a bit. So, yeah, can we get better than Hart? It's going to be you know, there's better out there. Can we afford them? Can we find them? And will we kill them? You know, if we could get another Boric, I see his cousin signed for Hibs. You know, but if you could get another Arthur Boric, you would be going brilliant. But there's not too many of them about. That's the problem. It's finding somebody that's going to be able to handle the pressure, because Liam's talked about the character. You know, they need to be able to handle the pressure playing for Celtic. You know, obviously in Scotland of not having a lot to do in a lot of the matches, and then on the flip side of Europe when they've got lots to do. So, yeah, keepers something we've got to be looking at. You know, Siegrist came, not a lot of time, Achilles injury, and then a few eyebrows raised when Bain came in instead of Siegrist, and he didn't cover himself in glory, did he? You know, it wasn't like a young boy's first game. He shouldn't have been that nervous. You know, he's an experienced professional goalkeeper. Horrendous couple of mistakes to have in a season, never mind in one game. You know, it ended up costing us points. So, but you know, Bain's here. He's got a 3-year contract. I don't think Toby done great over in Ireland. It will release Connor Hazard. It's something that, yeah, if the scouts find, you know, the scouts are constantly looking for people to improve it. I think if they say to Brendan, by the way, I've got this keeper, absolutely amazing. Here's the dossier on him. Here's the videos. Have a look at everything. Yeah, Celtic will go out and get him. It's finding someone that's going to improve the team. You know, and can we get better than Siegrist? Maybe, but are you going to bring in better Siegrist than Watson Hart just to sit on the bench? Maybe not. Maybe that's not where you're going to spend your money.
That's the main problem right now. We've got two goalkeepers who are happy sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
Siegrist and Bain both seem content to be backups. And although, you know, you need to have multiple goalkeepers and only one can play, you're always going to have a number one. But any player who doesn't want to be playing every week, I'm sorry, I don't want them at Celtic Park.
You've got to have people that are mentally strong. I feel like that's been one of the issues with Celtic across the board in Europe in the last sort of decade. The players haven't been mentally strong enough. When we concede one goal, we crumble, and we concede another 2 or 3. It's something that perhaps just even a win in the Champions League group stage could be seen as progress, not just for the team, but for the players mentally as well. That's one hurdle over because they know they can take it to these teams. I think that'll be something that'll be really important for Celtic to look at over the Champions League campaign. With a bit of luck, hopefully in the group stage as well. I'm not one for the glamour ties. I prefer the easiest route possible that we can get, if there is an easy route in the Champions League. But there could be some more players coming in to help us along that road. We've apparently agreed a fee for Australian forward Marco Tilio plays for Melbourne City, 21 years old. The City Group connection is helping Celtic out there, and another forward potentially coming in as well. We're also linked with Hyun-jun from Gangwon FC. I'm hoping, Liam, have I got that pronunciation bang on?
You've got it as good as I would get it because I don't speak Korean, so I'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
But the thing is, with Hyun-jun, I don't know why I've taken a second crack at his full name, but his team, they're involved in a bit of a tough relegation battle at the moment, so they're a bit reluctant to let him go at this point in the season. They don't think the K-League season finishes until around November, December time.
It's about the same calendar as Japan.
Yeah, they would want him on loan till January, which I don't think Celtic would pay around £2 to £3 million for a player now, then let the club take him back until January. It doesn't seem like a Celtic thing, but a lot of the targets and a lot of these players that we're really close to bringing in, they are forwards, they are wingers. With Marco Tilio, a scout report on Twitter from the Aussie Scout. It was a great report. Be sure to check it out on Twitter if you get the chance. He said he played mostly as a left winger, but he's been more effective as a 10. We spoke about Haksabanovic perhaps moving over to a 10, perhaps. Marco Tilio could be that man. But Liam, it seems like a lot of the talk on Acsom has been about goalkeepers, defenders. But a lot of the activity from Celtic in the transfer window is bolstered up the front line. Do you think that's what Celtic need? Do you think new wingers or perhaps someone playing behind the striker is what Celtic could be looking for?
Well, I think it was Jock Stein that said it doesn't matter if they score 3, we'll score 4. So, best form of defence is attack and all that. Maybe there's something to be said for that. And Tilio is a good prospect. Already a full international with Australia, went to the World Cup with them. He's the real deal. Yang Hyun-jun, I do not know that much about, but I know that his club are basically being quite unreasonable. This is maybe why we've had a lot more joy in the Japanese league than we have the K-League. The Japanese, the J-League is of a slightly higher standard than the K-League. But if you look at the Korean national team, you look at the Japanese national team, there's not much to pick between them. They're both quality sides, right? And both more than capable of giving European teams a game on their day.
Yes,
yeah. So really, I think that the problem here is that the club kind of want to have their cake and eat it. It's like they want the money, but they don't want to lose their best player when they're fighting relegation. Neglecting the fact that 2 or 3 million quid in Korea would probably buy you 3 or 4 players, which might be what they need to stave off relegation. Because if they're in a relegation spot already and Yang's been playing for them all season, I don't see how keeping him is going to change that. Clearly, the team needs a shake-up. So the smart thing to do would be to get cash in on your asset. And then, same thing happened with Daisen Maeda, right? Daisen Maeda left Matsumoto Yamaga while they were fighting relegation. And, the fan base was like, oh, God, why are we selling our best player when we're about to get relegated, One, Daisen's value would have plummeted if he'd have been playing in J2 instead of J1. And 2, Yamaga decided to roll the dice, cash in their asset, and see what they could do. Didn't work. They're now playing in the 3rd tier, unfortunately. But it's the nature of things, and I really think Gangwon should be of the same mind, but they're not. And this is why we didn't sign Cho Gae-sung either. From what I hear, the player was up for it. The agent was pushing for it. The club were being unreasonable with the fee. They kept going back and forth. Oh, he's had a good World Cup, so now it's this much. It's like, well, no, you were quoted as this much 2 weeks ago. You can't just suddenly shift the goalposts. It seems that Korean clubs are a bit difficult to deal with. I still think this move will happen, because once a player makes his mind up he's going, it usually happens.
Yeah, he said to South Korean media, word for word, I want to go to Celtic, I want to go this summer. So he seems absolutely desperate to get the move to Celtic. I don't know what that would say about his mindset, if he would pull the same sort of tricks when he comes to Celtic. I'm not too sure. But I'm always encouraged when I see a team like a Brentford, or a Brighton linked with the same player as Celtic, because we've seen how good these teams' recruitment philosophy is. So if Celtic are sort of following the same approach or following on the same path that these teams are, it should always be encouraging. And also the fact that Celtic are looking at these nations that are sort of untapped. You don't see many teams go to these league and pluck players, but their nations on the rise. You see them pushing on and making progress at an international level. South Korea and Japan both got to the last 16 of the World Cup. So the national team's clearly on the rise. And Celtic are getting on board to get some of the younger players that are coming through from these rising nations. It can only be encouraging for Celtic fans. We've got an exciting summer ahead of us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We've had probably around 900 watching us over this hour. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. We've got 3 tickets left for Gordon Strachan live in Glasgow, Barras Art and Design with a Celtic State of Mind. You can get them down below in the links. If you have enjoyed today's broadcast with myself, Liam Carrigan and Lawrence Connolly, be sure to press the like button and subscribe. We do this every day, daily Celtic content, an hour long for all of you. So be sure to get involved. Thank you very much, and we'll see you tomorrow.